And we are live. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the stream. I hope you're well, that you had a nice beginning of the week. I'm very happy to have you back here tonight for another interview, but this time not with a member of the European Parliament. Tonight we're doing things a bit differently. We will instead try to solve one of the big mysteries of the universe. We will talk about the new European Bauhaus. So it's a movement that the EU launched in 2021, so it's pretty recent, that is supposed to merge together culture and environmental policy. In a nutshell, it's financed by bits and pieces of different existing EU policies, or like the Horizon Europe policy, which is a research program of the EU, regional funds, the LIFE program, which is dedicated to biodiversity, and a bunch of other different programs. So it's made of different bits and pieces, and it's supposed to cover a bunch of different sectors. So from construction to textile to whatever you can think of, to basically help citizens have access to a more sustainable environment and goods. So I'm sure it sounds unclear. Welcome to the club. The new European Bauhaus has become a bit of a meme in the bubble, as something that is very blurry, and actually nobody is very certain of what it's supposed to achieve, because it goes in very different places. So if we in the bubble we are confused about it, I can only imagine how you outside the bubble can be when you look at that. But to help us see a bit clearer in all this, we will have with us a special guest, Adalbert Jahnz. I say a special guest because Adalbert is actually the first person from the European Commission to ever come on the channel. So, and even better than that, he offered to come on the channel to explain us what the new European Bauhaus actually is. So we are finally cool enough for the Commission to come over. So I'm very happy about that. And why is he the person coming to tell us about this is because Adalbert is the spokesperson in the European Commission in charge of the new European Bauhaus. So he's used to make EU policy more understandable and explaining it to journalists most of the time, but also regular citizens like you and I tonight. Before we start the conversation, as usual, I remind the house rules for anyone who would be new with us tonight. So our guest will stay with us 45 minutes to 1 hour. It will depend on how many questions that you have, and also I'll tell you after, but tomorrow is going to be a hectic day tomorrow for me, so I'm happy to have a shorter stream. But yeah, after 45 minutes, he will enjoy the rest of his evening, and you will be stuck with me for another 20-30 minutes to debrief the interview, discuss what you thought, answer additional questions, these sort of things. As usual, I've prepared my own questions. I collected questions from people on Reddit and Discord and all that. You can, of course, ask your questions via the chat. It's there for that. I will keep an eye on it and pick among your suggestions. So feel free to participate and react. But as usual, do it without spamming and while staying civil. And on this note, I think I covered all the basics, so I suggest that we dive right into it. Good evening, Adalbert Jahnz. Thank you very much for taking the time and offering to take the time to come explain to us what is the new European Bauhaus. So you heard me listen to me do the bit of the introduction. Before we dive into the new European Bauhaus, is there anything about you that I forgot? You're a spokesperson, but you don't only cover the new European Bauhaus. What else do you cover in the Commission?
Yeah, that's right. I'm one of the first of all, good evening. And thanks for having me. I'm one of the 3 spokespeople who cover the European Green Deal. So I have a colleague who does energy and climate. I have a colleague who does health and regional policy. And I cover environment, maritime affairs, and transport, in addition to the new European Bauhaus. But we really work as a team. So yeah, it's basically the Green Deal team in the Commission. So
easy stuff. There's nothing complicated about that. It's very easy to explain.
Yeah. Energy at the moment is super calm as
pretty
well,
boring.
So,
pretty boring these days. But well, let's go back to the topic of tonight, which is the new European Bauhaus. So first, can you tell us why the new European Bauhaus? So why did the Commission decide to launch a movement called the new European Bauhaus? What's the story?
Yeah, the story. Actually, there's quite a few different stories around the new European Bauhaus. The first time I heard about it was, in fact, in 2020. So you said in the introduction that we launched it in 2021. In fact, the first mention of it was in 2020.
Yeah, in the State of the Union.
Exactly, in President von der Leyen's State of the Union speech. I don't know if you remember that State of the Union, but it was her first. It was very emotional. It was, of course, packed with stuff because it was the first, and she was really setting out a lot of deep policy. And she said at that occasion that she would want to launch this new idea of a new European Bauhaus. And really, the idea was to give a kind of a soul to the European Green Deal. Okay, what does it mean? When I heard about it for the first time, I immediately thought back to all sorts of conversations I had with friends and family and just many random people who were telling me things like, okay, the green ambitions, it's all very nice, but if you look at the green buildings that are being built, they're basically blocks of concrete without any windows, because that's energy efficient. And what about old houses? They're all going to be torn down, and it's going to be super ugly. Do we really want to live in this kind of thing? Or things like, oh, okay, so rich people will be able to afford to live in pretty neighborhoods, but what about poorer people? And they will be stuck with high energy bills and horrible houses. And what is this going to mean? And when I heard the president mention the new European Bauhaus as an idea to kind of think about those things, think about how things are actually going to look like and feel like, I thought that this is basically a big hole in our whole way of thinking about the green transition, and a hole that with this new thing we're going to be able to plug. And I understand that but this is just internal anecdotes, that the idea emerged in the president's mind also as a result of many conversations that she had while thinking at the beginning of the mandate about how to go about creating the European Green Deal. And so she launched this idea, but at the beginning this idea didn't have a very, very defined content. And this is also something that's kind of unprecedented in the way we do things at the European Commission, because most of the time when we have an idea, we kind of think, okay, what's the objective? Where do we need to get? Then how are we going to go about it? Looking at maybe some past examples, what kind of tools we've got, legislation, framework, financing. Okay, we put this all together, and then we write lots and lots of pages of documents, and then we present a document. Bam, that's it. And okay, this is all great, and we have robust processes to get stakeholders involved and all of these things. And that is all, it's a very effective way of doing legislation policy. But it's not necessarily something that manages to mobilize people's creativity and people's emotional attachment, people's soul kind of thing. So with the new European Bauhaus, we decided to do things very differently, and we started with an idea and a bunch of values, and then that's how the story started. We went into a co-design phase, which was all about listening to what people had as ideas, as existing examples, as visions, as stories that they would like to see from this new European Bauhaus. And okay, I'm kind of getting a bit ahead of myself. And frankly, you will see this, I think, a number of times as we talk today. It's kind of hard to talk about the new European Bauhaus from the beginning. I'm always going to be starting in the middle of something. But the co-design phase was like that. It wasn't something that, it wasn't a policy that we designed and then tested or asked for feedback, but rather we really asked for ideas. It was like that very much because of how we see the new European Bauhaus as a concept. One of its main values is about participation, and that's kind of how it's meant to be. Okay, go participate.
Yeah. And speaking of the way the European Bauhaus is, it's a movement. It's not a policy, and it's not something that we often see in Brussels, in the bubble, especially in the Commission. Like you mentioned, usually the Commission does legislation. So you have a policy, you have a consultation, you have a green paper, white paper, etc., etc. So what makes the movement what makes the movement a movement and not just another EU policy? Like, what sets like the European Bauhaus aside from the regular stuff that the Commission is doing?
Yeah, it's so first of all, I think it's really the way it was created. So with this co-design phase, which, as I said, started with values, and then we started. I've got a whole report to hand about how the co-design phase went. It was really quite fascinating. Actually, I would kind of encourage you to read up on it. But basically, it was a 6 months process where we started with the website, where we kind of had a kind of core group of interested people who became this members of this high-level roundtable, so kind of really advanced practitioners, but also a strategy that we had to activate conversations about the Bauhaus. So for example, we had a toolkit that we would distribute to all sorts of places just to encourage people to talk about the new European Bauhaus. At the beginning, it was done very much with the involvement of the Commission people who were kind of launching this initiative, but then it kind of started happening organically. People were organizing themselves, seminars and conversations, discussions about what they wanted to see from
so that was during the so-called co-design phase. So you launched the thing, and then suddenly people came up with, oh yeah, we made a meeting, and here's the outcome. And so how do you deal? Because like usually when you have a consultation by the commission already has an idea of what it wants to do. It is testing idea and see what sticks and what doesn't. Here, from what you're telling me, it sounds like I don't want to say you had no clue what you wanted to do. You had the general idea, general values, but then it was more, okay, throw at us like what you want. We need the ideas. So then how do you like sort through everything that you got? Because I imagine that it was, especially if it came from regular citizens, people who are not part of the bubble, etc. They're not used to, let's say, to the formatting that we have in the bubble. So how do you sort through all this and try to make something that makes sense altogether?
Yeah, I mean, so it's not like the new European Bauhaus was an idea that was completely vague and undefined from the start. You know, we had a certain amount of values in our head. Notably, the three kind of core values of the movement, which are sustainability, inclusion, and aesthetics. So really this combination of things that are green, that are for everyone, and that are beautiful. And we can talk a little bit about what this means later on. But we had this, and also it was all happening in the framework of the European Green Deal. So basically, we all know, at least on an intuitive level, that the green transformation that we have ahead of us in the next, hopefully 30 years, is something that requires a cultural dimension. And so we're not creating something, but we're plugging into something that on a cultural level exists in Europe. You know, this conversation has been taking place. People have been doing these things and thinking about those things, but not in a way that was sort of networked together on the European level, and not in a way that was linked in any kind of structured way to the policy. And that's part of the value of the new European Bauhaus. And so I wasn't personally part of the co-design phase. I was still doing something quite different in the Commission. But this, I've been discussing this with colleagues, and I've also read this really fascinating report. And it paints a very different picture from what's normally a stakeholder consultation. So, for example, one of the things that was guiding this kind of collection of ideas phase was to give value to unique contributions. You know, normally, when you do a stakeholder consultation, you look at the things that most people care about. What are the most common?
The most common answers, yes.
Yeah, because that's kind of what gives you the sense of what's most mainstream. In this instance, of course, we were looking at that, but there was also a very specific value given to unique contributions, to see what are the kind of creative issues that we can encounter, what is an originality that can be brought in. And there was also an interesting aspect, which is what we were asking for were different things. So, for example, stories were a key aspect of this. Because we're talking about values and because we're talking about engaging people, we encourage them to share stories. of things that happened in their community that is kind of relevant to how we are supposed to transform our lives for the future, or examples of projects that exist, or visions, just elements of what they imagine. And this all sounds really quite exotic, but in fact, if you look at kind of relatively advanced research into how to create things, into design thinking, and these things that people in universities develop to activate people, these participatory approaches, these are things that are really, really well designed and thought through. And we just happen to have at the Commission some colleagues who are plugged into this academic work and who have been able to apply it in this context. And as a result of this thing, we ended up with something that's, I think, conceptually relatively tight. So it's not something that conceptually goes into all sorts of directions, but it's the overall kind of core of the movement is something that that can be explained relatively fast.
And concretely, because right now we're talking about values, we're talking about people bringing ideas, bringing project. Concretely, what are we talking about? Are we talking only about building? Because you mentioned like your first impression when you heard about the European Bauhaus. When I first heard of it during the State of the Union, the first thing that came to my mind was, it's a funding program for architects basically. So is it just architecture, or does it also delve in other things?
It's definitely not just architecture. And the reason why is because as we started talking to people, a lot of what came up was not just architecture. And I think that makes absolute sense, because architecture is one element of, say, for example, a neighborhood. And a neighborhood is not just the built environment, but it's also the lifestyle that goes with it. It shapes how people engage, how people discuss things, how people live. And so all of these different elements are interconnected. And when we're creating some elements of this, we need to take into account the rest. So it is definitely not only about architecture. It has really a broad cultural dimension. We've been talking pretty abstractly for now. Let me give you maybe a couple of fun examples of what
Go ahead.
What it can be. Okay, let me maybe start still with a little bit of a small abstract thing, just to finish on the co-design phase and what this came up with, because I think that will kind of frame things a little bit. So basically, what we discovered is that there are sort of four fundamental, we call them axes, that people care about when they think about those things. And they are reconnecting with nature, so looking at how all of the stuff that we do can be linked to nature. Then regaining a sense of community and belonging, so countering this tendency that modernity created to atomize people, to separate them, but bring them together. Then prioritizing the places and people that need it the most. So basically not creating fancy stuff for the rich, but acting where people need it. And finally, this is a horrible expression, is the need for long-term life cycle and integrated thinking in the industry. What this means is basically, instead of having a kind of throwaway culture where you create an object and then it's single use and you throw it away, from the start you think of things as long-term, as repairable, as reusable, recyclable.
So we're talking about circular economy kind of stuff.
We're talking about circular economy, but on a larger scale kind of thing. And so what this means is that with these key axes, we can really have lots and lots of different types of projects. And so to make it really very very concrete, very specific, we launched in 2021 the new European Bauhaus prizes, which was a way to kind of collect examples of either things that are already done or things that people are designing, are thinking about, and in kind of two strands. For one was for like accomplished designers, architects, these kinds of people who have projects already on the ground that they want to have recognized. And the second strand is for emerging, rising stars, we call it. So for younger people below 30, have ideas, who maybe haven't had the opportunity to kind of realize their ideas, but have some really, really good ideas. So always in these two strands. And there's really been lots of like super interesting things that came out of it. So a simple example that was actually from this year's prizes that I really liked was a project from Hungary called Kulko, and Kulko is basically these are small kind of modular structures that are made from wood, from fabric, and from steel. And what they do is they contain plants and flowers. And what this does is it creates a kind of cooling corridor that you can place in a city when and where it gets really hot.
So that's something inside the building or outside?
No,
like you can put in the street?
Yeah, you can put this on the street. Yeah. So it's an outside thing. It's something that you can install easily in a hot street, and this is particularly good for kind of densely populated neighborhoods where you don't have space to plant trees, but you can put these Kulko things, and the shapes and sizes can be adjusted to fit different locations. And the young woman who created this, when she was receiving the prize, she was explaining that she came with this idea thinking about her grandmother in Budapest, who during a heat wave was simply unable to leave her house because it was too hot. And then she thought, okay, how can I have something that's portable, that's easy to move around, and that will really address this problem, that will really cool down the street so that my grandma can go out. And this is something that really exemplifies all of the stuff about the new European Bauhaus. It's about reconnecting with nature, because you put plants and you use a kind of nature solution to cool a street. It's about prioritizing places and people who need it the most, because these are people who don't have air conditioning and who may want to go out in the streets, and maybe they are fragile. It's also about a sense of belonging, because it's something that draws people out of their houses and into the neighborhoods and creates a public space. And of course, it's a reusable solution, because it's just a bunch of things that you can move really, really easily, and that you don't throw away, but you reuse. So it's a kind of a small scale example. Yeah.
In the end, it's when I listen to this example, it's something that is closer to urbanism. It's a way to reorganize space to according to certain priorities. So here it's done in an idea according to the idea of the Green Deal, but it's something to reorganize space within cities and beyond. If I because I imagine, like, for now we're talking about examples inside city, but do you have like other examples that are in the countryside or something that could be put elsewhere?
Yeah, for sure. But just to finish on Kulko, it's not really a huge concept. It's just a bunch of things that you can use. And this was one of these Rising Star awards. So basically, it's something that was created by mainly a designer below the age of 30, someone who I spoke to at the New European Bauhaus Festival, which was also really cool. But this is a relatively small scale thing. But of course, the New European Bauhaus is not just about small things. It can also be about really big things. Another project that won the New European Bauhaus prizes was a whole neighborhood or in fact a social housing project in Vienna called Gleis 21, which included buildings which look really impressive because they're made of wood, and I mean the facade is made of wood, and it really kind of contrasts with the rest of the urban fabric. But also it includes a way of living for these people, the way that it was co-designed with the people who live in there, which is also rather unusual for social housing, and all the possibilities that it gives the people who live there. Like really a very kind of solid multidisciplinary project. And yeah, for rural areas, there's also been quite a few projects that have been that have been awarded. Now, I don't know them all, to be quite frank, but like a typical-ish example that we would look at would be, for example, community gardens. This is a good new European Bauhaus project, which activates a community in nature and gives them stuff to do, stuff to discuss around certain types of facilities. Sometimes it can be around food, for example. So we've got some projects like that. So lots of different things.
And so you receive these projects, these ideas, and once you have the ideas, what's happening? Is it the European Bauhaus that is financing these design to be made into reality, or is it just like a prize and something to say, hey, look, some people have good ideas, maybe look into it? So how is what's ultimately the use?
Yeah, so the prizes are a specific thing, right? So this is not, the prizes are not the whole European Bauhaus. It's just one of the many things that happen in the new European Bauhaus framework. And the prizes are basically they're giving some money to the winners, not a hell of a lot. I think it's 30,000 for an accomplished project now, which is substantial, but it's not going to finance the building of a neighborhood. It's basically about recognition, and it's I think it's half of this year for the Rising Star Awards, but also it brings a communications package. So working together with those people to either amplify what they have done in order to help other people then replicate it. That's more for kind of accomplished projects, or help them communicate about it to potential donors, to potential funders, to people who may want to commercialize these kinds of things. So it's more about communication. There isn't more money specifically in that. This said, it so happens that new European Bauhaus projects are typically exactly what we want in the whole European Green Deal. So it is likely that some of them will be eligible for other things that happen in the Green Deal. For example, if it's a startup, it can be easily eligible to work with the European Institute for Technology, which is like this thing that works with startups to kind of scale them up, to help them put their products to market. And it has happened. We've had projects that have gone from a prize of the European Bauhaus as an idea, as a concept, then to become one of the startups that were looked after by the EIT, and then hopefully it will go beyond. And yeah, these are things that we're thinking about. There's also we're working on a labeling strategy for the new European Bauhaus to really be able to say to give people a tool to kind of know that a project is conformed to the concepts of the new European Bauhaus, about these 4 axes that I mentioned, but also that it's transdisciplinary, participative approach, it's linked to a specific place, these kinds of things. And so with the idea that maybe, for example, if we give, or if somebody gives in a robust way a label, a new European Bauhaus label to a project, then when national authorities finance projects with cohesion money, for example, they can look at those things favorably. So this is just one idea, and it we've been working a lot with national authorities to kind of also co-design the new European Bauhaus, and I think 23 member states have a mention of the new European Bauhaus in different ways in the kind of cohesion policy strategy programs. So they are also aware of this, and they also kind of are on board. So there should be eventually also possibilities for financing that. But it's a relatively young movement still, so we're not on these timescales.
And like you mentioned, it's a new movement. It was launched properly in 2021, so last year. But it's not like a self-standing program. It's not per se a program, an autonomous program that has its own place and dedicated budget in the EU budget. It's something that I mentioned, like I mentioned in the introduction. It's financed a bit by the Creative Europe, or a bit by Horizon Europe, etc., etc. So is it something that ultimately could become a self-standing policy, or is it like let's say a short-term movement that is initiated by the commission, and then maybe it sticks and it will go live its own life further away from the commission, or not?
I mean, the new European Bauhaus doesn't belong to us. It's something that we launched, and it's a movement that has its own life. But this said, it is something that's important for us, and both the president is very engaged in it, but also Commissioners Gabriel and Commissioner Ferreira, who have been working a lot on it. And of course, we've been using the financial instruments in those different policies to support different objectives of the new European Bauhaus. I can't tell you much about the future for now. Of course, we're looking into how to make the new European Bauhaus sustainable. It is a big movement in Europe already. We have over 500 partners, which are kind of non-profit organizations that have told us that they want to be part of the new European Bauhaus. We also have friends of the Bauhaus, which are more kind of national authorities, local authorities, or businesses that also want to be part of the European Bauhaus. So the movement is there on the ground. It's also in the Commission. We do spend a sizable amount of money on it. We're looking at about 100 million euro now through different streams. How that's going to be organized in the future, we'll look into this. One thing that has happened very recently, last week, was the European Parliament voted a report on the new European Bauhaus, where it also was calling for a more sustainable financing, including even an idea such as a 500 million euro mission under Horizon Europe, which is a very nerdy thing in terms of what exactly missions in the Horizon Europe are, but it's they're also kind of cool. But we kind of not at that stage yet in our reflection. So we'll
okay. You'll see in the future. Okay. I have a question in the chat that is interesting. It relates a bit to what you were talking about when you're talking about the friends of the European Bauhaus. So the question is, although planning a cultural site for the Green Deal is a good idea, most EU citizens and people creating art are not aware of this project. So does the Commission plan, for example, to communicate towards art, design, architecture schools and university, so that academics then take the idea and shape the topic and develop it further as part of their teaching and as part of the project done by schools and universities?
Yeah, absolutely. We've got lots and lots of different ideas and projects about how to spread it. I wouldn't be quite as maybe as definitive that with this idea that it's not known. In fact, we've got kind of members of the high-level round table, which are like super famous people in a bunch of different domains, including also architects and designers, including also some who are kind of very active on the academic in architecture schools, who are really driving the new European Bauhaus from the top of the reflection. And then we've got this thing called the NEB Lab, which is what we call a think and do tank, which is it's basically a think tank that also does things, and it engages really quite a lot of people, including also in the academic community, around ideas of the new European Bauhaus. There is a small group of universities that is creating a European Master of Arts that will be very much based on the new European Bauhaus ideas and engaging with the new European Bauhaus community. So all of these things are happening on the ground. If you're an architecture student and you haven't heard of the new European Bauhaus, you will hear about it, I think, sooner or later, and it will happen organically. But also, we will, of course, continue pushing it. We organized a festival of the new European Bauhaus. The European Commission organizing a festival. It's wild, but it was really successful, and we've seen really lots and lots of good engagement. So that is something that is meant to continue. So
to give us a bit of sense of scale, if you have the numbers, like within this year and a half to / 2 years since the movement has been launched, how many ideas did you get from the public? How many project has been submitted to the European Bauhaus?
how many ideas from the public. It doesn't necessarily work.
Or
like
projects.
this.
How many things?
Yeah, I'll give you a sense of scale. Okay, so the prizes, right, that I mentioned. For the second edition of the prizes, we got about 1,000 entries. So that's really pretty good. So we have 500 partner organizations, and that kind of keeps growing. We had 81. I'm looking at. I need to zoom in. We had 81 in March 2021, and now we're at over 500. That's non-profits, foundations, education organizations, universities, these kinds of people. We've got, of course, like super famous people working on this. We've got member states doing stuff that is very much in line with the European Bauhaus, that is labeled as linked to the European Bauhaus. For example, there is a law in Spain that is the law on the quality of architecture that was adopted earlier this year, which is explicitly linked to the European Bauhaus. It mentions the European Bauhaus in the law, and of course, it's very much in line with its principles. In France, the Ministries of Housing and of Culture are sponsoring together a program called Committed to the Quality of Tomorrow's Housing. It's a huge call. So lots of money going for transformational projects, 97 projects all over France, which are there to establish, to be created in line with the principles of the NEB, the European Bauhaus, and will also establish a bunch of NEB demonstrators in the country, so kind of emblematic projects. What else can I tell you? When we did the European Bauhaus Festival, which was mainly in Brussels, we also had 220 side events organized by all sorts of people all over Europe. That's really quite a lot.
That's taking shape and speed as things go. I mean, the mere fact that there's already 1,000 projects for the next new European Bauhaus prize shows that there are things happening and people are aware of it. And to get away a bit from, I don't want to say from the policy, but from the movement itself, about you. So you're the spokesperson in the commission in charge of this. But like you mentioned at the beginning, you don't only deal with the European Bauhaus, you deal with maritime issues, environmental policies, etc., etc. So how long did it take you to let's say, get familiar with the European Bauhaus, especially since it's not the usual stuff that the commission goes, and how deep do you have to go? So let's say behind the scenes, how much does it take for a spokesperson to be comfortable enough with the European Bauhaus and be able to explain it to others?
Well, I hope I'm able to more or less explain it to others. We'll see what the audience thinks. But look, how long I've been really enthusiastic about it. So the way I'm learning about it is basically mainly by talking to people, and being a spokesperson on this gives me privileged access to really brilliant colleagues that I can just go and speak to, and who will explain things to me and show things to me. But I think what's really incredible about the new European Bauhaus, and I think I'm kind of showing a little bit of internal cuisine in here, is that no one really has a full overview of what happens under the European Bauhaus umbrella. And that is by design, because it's not something that belongs to us. It's not something that we run in a structured way. We kind of prototype things, we finance things, we try to give direction to the movement, we try to empower people who are interested in this stuff, but we don't decide everything about it, far from it. So we kind of plug in financing, we plug in ideas, we organize things, and then we let people work on it. We also try to give intellectual sort of structure underpinning to it through the high-level roundtable, through the NEB Compass. So it's another kind of pretty intellectually engaging document that we're working on to really flesh out the principle of the Bauhaus with examples, with ideas, with kind of intellectual underpinning. We go to meetings, these kinds of things, but we don't know everything that is going on. And I think that's kind of good, because it's the commission is at the core. It's a body that deals with policy and politics, and with money. And culture is something that belongs to everyone here in Europe. So we want to be part of it, but not necessarily the kind of culture organizer. It's not a top-down thing like that.
And so, like, what are the main, let's say, challenges that you have when you explain the European Bauhaus to the rest of the world? Like, what are the usual questions that you get? Are journalists like a bit puzzled? Okay, what is this thing? Especially since you say, okay, it's nobody has a really complete vision of what the European Bauhaus. So what's the most difficult for you to try to shape it in a way that is understandable for everyone?
Yeah, I'm of course only one person in the NEB constellation who works on the comms, so I'm not necessarily the person shaping it all. Look, with journalists, it's really interesting because there's just lots of different types of journalists, right? So if you look at generalists who are really after kind of day-to-day news, it's hard to get them to think about something so not newsy as the new European Bauhaus. So that's also one of the reasons why we have prizes, and we have, as communication people, that we are happy to have prizes or lighthouse demonstrators, which is another cool thing that we do under the NEB, or the festival, which was kind of a big thing. So if we create events, then it's easier to get people interested from a kind of pure news perspective. But of course, they're not gonna write about it every day. There has to be a good reason for journalists to write about it. So I spend a lot of time, when I talk to journalists about some delegated act here and there, or some infringement, or some policy that we're making, I also propagandize people about the NEB because I'm really excited about it, and they kind of interested often on the personal level, but generalists would don't often write about it. By contrast, we work a lot with magazines, with kind of trade papers, for example, of the construction industry. We work with events. I don't know. I gave a talk at the Munich Design Week, which had a whole very long session dedicated to the new European Bauhaus. These kinds of things, and of course, we work also a little bit on preparing the president for her kind of interventions about the new European Bauhaus. When she went to Italy to talk, among others, about it at the Maxi Museum, and where she also discussed it with the Pope, which was also quite a wild event. So yeah, just very different angles. But yeah, when it comes to questions, I do find myself kind of going back to basics a lot of times. And I think once people kind of grasp the fact that this is an adventure for the Commission, and not one of our funding programs or one of our kind of policies, they get much more comfortable navigating this original space.
Yeah, it's not like the everyday commission work. I mean, it definitely stands apart, especially when you know a bit how normally things are being done in the commission, and internally, like for the commission, which is like I don't want to say like a rigid structure, but it's an institution. So you have the way of doing things. There are procedures. There's a way. 70 years of experience of doing things. How internally do they deal with that? Because suddenly they say, okay, usually you're supposed to do things like that. Well, throw the book out the window, more or less, and we're going to do something that is completely different. Does it challenge too much, like the way of doing things for the Commission, or are people actually pretty happy to go away from the usual rule book?
It's really an opportunity to do things differently. You're absolutely right. And whether people are happy, well, I think they're happy. But of course, I don't know everyone who works on the NEB. Okay, so just to give you a bit of an internal flavor, the core of the NEB in the Commission sits in the Joint Research Center, which is quite interesting. But it's a really good place to kind of network people together. There's a unit called New European Bauhaus, which is a small but extremely dedicated and very, very smart team of people who are very original in the ways of thinking for the Commission, but also who understand how, for example, financing works or how to engage people. So there's a kind of mix of original thinking and knowledge of commission processes. And they work very closely with colleagues from DG Research, where Horizon Europe finances a lot of European Bauhaus related projects, and also DG Research was really instrumental in organizing the festival. They did some fantastic work on that. There's a lot of people in DG Regio who work on the new European Bauhaus as well, because of this link to cohesion policy. And there's people here and there in the Commission who are also work on this, for example, in DG Education and Culture, because, for example, it's one of the strands that will be present in Erasmus+. So people will be encouraged to study new European Bauhaus-related things, because we really need these skills. We really need, for example, architects and urbanists and fashion designers who know how to do green and beautiful stuff. That's one side. But also, for example, Discover EU. It's this program where people who turn 18 can get train tickets to go and discover the European Union, which I think is really a great experience, and also fantastic for people who don't necessarily have the money when they're
travel
young
by
to
themselves.
go
Yes,
around, right? And so this year there will be a new European Bauhaus route proposed to people who get Discover EU tickets, so that they can go around Europe and actually see and experience some of the new European Bauhaus projects that are all over Europe. So you see, it's really kind of finding opportunities in all sorts of different places and grabbing people and telling them, hey, you can be part of this as well.
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like the way you describe the internal process in the Commission, like it's not in a silo. Usually you have this policy is in this DG, maybe some other DGs can be involved, but you have the one silo that is dealing with this policy. When you listen to it, yes, you have a small core unit that is a group of people who are working dedicated to the European Bauhaus, but then you have people all around the different DGs, Regio, education, etc., who then lend a hand to try to work on this from their own perspective that can be like very different from each other. So that's pretty interesting. I have a question in the chat, which is like going back again to the roots. So the question is, why naming it Bauhaus? Is there any inspiration from the 20th century movement? And if so, what are the inspirations?
Yeah, this is a really good question. It's kind of nerdy, but I like that. The historical Bauhaus was a place and a school and also a movement which inspired us in certain specific ways. So what we definitely, with the new European Bauhaus, the idea is not to replicate the old Bauhaus, the historical Bauhaus, as a style. It is a very particular style in terms of architecture and in terms of design. That is not the idea. The idea is to go to the transdisciplinary approach of the old Bauhaus, and the fact that the historical Bauhaus was created at a time where there were new techniques and new tools, new materials available. At the time, it was steel, for example, and it sought to engage with these new materials and create new things. And today we find ourselves also facing new possibilities, new materials, new tools, and we also face the need to look at things from a transdisciplinary perspective. But that's as far as it goes in terms of inspiration. We do not want to replicate the new European Bauhaus style. It's not a kind of purely Eurocentric project. Far from it. In fact, you will see that, for example, the three latest members of the high-level roundtable, this kind of steering group of really smart people, are all connected in very, very strong ways, in particular to different countries in Africa. So we really try to also kind of broaden the cultural meaning of links of the new European Bauhaus. And of course, it's not a project that's or a movement that is led by academics. It is really a co-created space that has a kind of strong intellectual leadership component through the high level roundtable, but it's specifically designed to engage people.
It's bottom up process. Even if you have
Definitely.
let's say like a intellectual, like a high level idea, then it's people that bring their own thing. Another question / comment in the chat, which is, so the European Bauhaus is a platform that tries to initiate more positive thinking and ideas based on infrastructure. Is that a fair description?
It's one of the things that it's trying to do. Yeah, absolutely. But it's not just about initiating thoughts and ideas. It's about doing things. It's about doing actual projects on the ground or in people's heads, as the case may be. It can be very, very different types of projects. We've been talking a lot about infrastructure and places and things, but one of the prizes of the European Bauhaus it's a good example. It's a thing in Germany called Klasse Klima, I think it's called, which is a weekly series of seminars at a university in Berlin, which is about which is not, it's not a piece of infrastructure. It's a piece of intellectual infrastructure. Maybe it's something that brings people together around ideas that are related to the new European Bauhaus. Not just about NEB ideas, but about the green transition, about living together, changing lifestyles, etc. And by the way, they also did a seminar where they had an extremely critical approach to the new European Bauhaus. They said all sorts of critical things about it, and also sought to bring in a constructive perspective, precisely around this idea of, it's too close in its concept to the historical Bauhaus and all the bad things that it had, and we really need to redefine them. So even the concept evolves through the people who work on the NEB.
And a final question, because I see the time passing, is someone's asking, so he's looked at the list of people on the high level roundtable, so people are already digging into the European Bauhaus, and the person is asking, on which criteria were the practitioner chosen? Why were they appointed to this high level roundtable?
Yeah, this is really a very good question that I genuinely cannot answer. Because I wasn't part of the very initial co-design phase where the first members were appointed. So I don't know exactly what the process was. I can probably come back to you bilaterally and tell you. What I can say is that I personally met so far 2 members of the roundtable, and one of them followed me on Twitter. Thank you very much, José Pedro. And they're all really impressive from what I could see. So I have absolutely no doubt that they are both committed and really valuable in terms of input on this. But again, while they give a kind of sense of vision, inspiration, some type of intellectual leadership to the movement is also not theirs. Their contributions are there to inspire people, but not to constrain them. And I think if you disagree with some members of the high level roundtable about this or that, don't feel discouraged and don't feel unnebbed. You're still definitely part of it if you want to.
Yeah, so basically they're here to, let's say, give the intellectual spark, and then people do whatever they want with the thing, and sometimes differ from what actually they might be their interpretation of the new European Bauhaus. So.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, as long as we agree on a certain amount of values, and as long as we do quality work, it can fit. But again, I mentioned this new European Bauhaus compass that we're working on. I've seen a number of drafts. It's really super useful because it's something that will give everyone who is interested in the NEB a kind of way of thinking about a specific project or a thing or an idea, and really see to what extent it embodies the different values of the NEB. So it will really give a little bit more kind of specific flesh based on the experience that we've had so far with many different projects, ideas that have been brought and will of course evolve.
And can people find on the website or somewhere a list of the project, the ideas that have been submitted by the European Bauhaus? Because someone say, seeing the ideas can often help in general. So seeing the ideas. Do you have a website that says, okay, this is the projects, and people can actually see what, in concrete terms, okay, what is the European Bauhaus spawning as projects, let's say?
Absolutely, yeah. So, the time when we were asking people to submit things, that was the co-design phase, and that is kind of over now. We've moved into a delivery phase where we have projects kind of running on the ground. We have the NEB lab, which does things, and we have the high-level roundtable producing more and more ideas, the compass, the lighthouse demonstrators, lots of calls, etc. So we're kind of beyond the phase where we were just like asking for contributions to shape the idea of the movement. But the co-design phase is documented, and there's a quite a cool website where you can see all of this thinking, everything that has been submitted, the stories, the visions, the examples, and that is part of the new European Bauhaus website, which is basically new European Bauhaus.europa.eu, I believe.
I'll show that to them afterwards during the debriefing. I have the pictures that you sent me, so I can already show them. Okay, this is the kind of stuff that you can you can do with under the European Bauhaus. We were worried that we might not need an hour, but we're almost at the hour mark. So congrats to both of us. We managed to fill the time, and I'm sure that we could continue the conversation for quite some time still. Thank you very much, Adalbert, for taking the time to come and answer the question. Chat, make sure to thank him for taking the time. You can follow him on Twitter. You have his Twitter below the video feed, so you can follow what he has to say on the European Bauhaus, but also the other policies that he's following and speaking about in the name of the European Commission. Before you go, if there is one thing that people have to remember on the European Bauhaus, what should they remember about it?
Look, I think the main thing really is the three core values. So sustainable, inclusive, and beautiful. Basically, if by 2050 our lives are more like this, then we will have kind of made a great contribution to European global culture. I think that's basically the short version of it.
That's fine by me. So thank you very much, Adalbert, again. Maybe I hope that I will see you and some of your colleagues again on the channel in the future. I hope you enjoyed your first experience on Twitch. I wish you a good evening, and hope to see you in the future. Chat, make sure to thank him again, and we will start the debriefing. Bye, Adalbert. Have a good one.
Thanks a lot. Bye.
Alright, let me go to my video settings. Up. Tag, I need to end the meeting, and I need to put the camera. I don't really need, but I should invest in an actual camera. That way I will not have to do that when we hey chat. So pretty interesting. I have to say that I can genuinely say that I understand a bit better, or finally, what the European Bauhaus is about, because for real, I made like I said in the introduction, like the European Bauhaus was a bit of a meme. I contributed to make it a meme in the bubble, on the fact that it's very high level, nobody understands what it is. Like now, hearing the concrete examples where it does, I have a better idea of actually it's for, and okay, I can get behind the project. So to sum up, it's more of a I don't want to say a communication project, but it's a lot around communication, about fostering ideas and then finding a way for the EU finding ways for to prop up this idea. Okay, I say this is a good idea, something that is interesting. Maybe some people should do more about it. Feels like a top-down idea that wants to support bottom-up projects. Yes and no. I agree that there is this sort of steering committee that gives let's say the general philosophy. So in that sense, yes, you have a top-down philosophy, a general philosophy, but then once this philosophy is defined, and so like you mentioned, there is the values that are associated with the with the European Bauhaus, then people do whatever they want with it, and then it's up to them to propose the projects, and then the commission looks at it and, oh, okay, that looks interesting. So I wouldn't say that it's a top-down to support bottom-up projects. There is, of course, a top-down aspect, like the ideas have to be like conceptualized at the top. I mean, of course, it's talking about the European Commission, the EU, it's institutional, so you always need something that comes from the top, at least to give a general framework, but then people do whatever they want. It's not like the Commission giving, let's say, a cahier des charges saying, okay, you have to fall exactly within this little box to be able to be eligible to the European Bauhaus. It's okay, this is the philosophy, and you do whatever you do. You then afterwards, and we can look then if it's in terms of quality good enough. Each time you come to the channel, you think that you should come more often. Yes, you should come more often. I'm there for that, and I'm happy that I keep you interested. So of course, definitely come more often. I'm there for that. But yeah, it was pretty interesting. So it went. It started in 2020 indeed, like because it was in the mentioned for the first time in the State of the Union. So this big annual speech, the big political speech of the EU every September. So it was the first State of the Union of Ursula von der Leyen in 2020, and she came up, especially since it was the first one, she had to come into like the give the key initiative that she wanted to do as part of a mandate, like especially since it was first State of the Union. She has to say, okay, this is my feuille de route. I don't know how to say it in English. My roadmap for the next years to come. And so she had mentioned for the first time this European Bauhaus movement that left everyone pretty puzzled, I have to say. And until today, until an hour ago, I was among these puzzled people. I hope that you're feeling less puzzled about it now, like I am. And so now it's going there. What else can I tell you? I took little notes because I don't want to make it a very long stream, because tomorrow actually I have to be at the airport at 5:30 in the morning, so I will need some sleep tonight. So I won't make it a very long stream. I have to prepare my stuff, and then I have to put my each time roadmap is set. The European Commission drops like, yeah, indeed, the roadmap is roadmap, framework, level playing field is something that the kind of wording that we love in Brussels. I mean, it's not only the Commission. Everyone is using those catchphrases. But yeah, what else did we talk about that was interesting? It goes beyond architecture. Ah, yes, I said that I would show you the things. So okay, up. Adalbert's colleague sent me a bunch of pictures of stuff that is being done under the European Bauhaus. Actually, yeah, no, I can't do it. So up, here's the picture of the Pope that he mentioned, like von der Leyen going to in Italy to show the European Bauhaus to the Pope. Indeed, it's pretty funny to see the Pope being fascinated by the European Bauhaus. What else do we have? Oh, this I don't quite understand what it is. Like it makes me more think like a humanitarian camp than anything. I have to say, like this kind of space, personal space with textile in between. That sounds a bit. It's a project from Shigeru Ban. Wow, you are you're very much knowledgeable about that project from Shigeru Ban. Okay. Follow up with the Pope as a meme potential. I agree. Ah, okay. So Shigeru Ban is one of the guy in the high level roundtable. Okay. Please, see, I'm getting context from the chat. What else do we have? Here, I suppose that it is. It's annoying because I have the pictures, so I have to, since they're all like different sizes and all that, I have to redo the whole thing every time. It's for a good cause. So yeah, I imagine it was for the prize. Yeah, these are our winners from the prize. So here you have yourself on the line. So those are nominees from the European Bauhaus prize. Here you have a huge banner that I won't show because it takes a shit ton of place. See, like these pictures are they're too big. This one is funny. It's a thing made of cardboard. Why is this so big? I should have reworked all the image to pull it at a single kind of format. That's on me. So yeah, the whole thing. So I don't know if you can see like precisely on the picture, but like the counter, the everything around, it's all made of cardboard. So the whole space is made of redesign, not redone, but reuse cardboard. I have to say the design is not too bad. So yeah, it's a lot of different stuff. We talked about this project in Hungary, like to I forgot the name. Kulko, I think it was the name of the project. This thing to like create that you could put in the street to with plants and all that to cool down a bit things. Here's the secret office of von der Leyen. Yes. I don't know how big the secret office. I mean, she doesn't have a secret office. She has an apartment actually next to her office. So I don't know how big the von der Leyen's flat is actually in the commission. But I mean, who knows? Maybe she has committed to the European Bauhaus so far that an entire own flat is made under the European Bauhaus standards. Let me look at what else I have on this. I think I'm running out of things. Oh, this one is super. I should have framed everything. So this, I think, I don't know if you can see, this is the thing in the center. This kind of like a pyramids with the small gardens on it. That's the project, if I'm not mistaken. But yeah, so you see there's a bunch of different things. What I will do is I also have the websites that I prepared. Up, you go away. I said go away. You come. I said I'm being sabotaged. European Bauhaus? Yes. Okay. So these are the websites of the European Bauhaus. So this is the one of the prize. What else do I have? Here you have a bunch of projects. So here's something that was inspired in Spain, Seville. So you have the winners of the prize, we mentioned and all that. Here we have something, the floating wild garden. Where is that? It's pretty. I like the design. Oh, okay, it's written there. It's in Spain as well, Barcelona. It's pretty. I like the concept of the rooftop garden. So you see, every time like you have the project. So it's one of the considered most inspiring projects, and you have the picture of the thing, and then you have a whole description of the thing saying, okay, why it's an inspiring project. Another thing here, again in Spain, it's very Spain focused. In Sevilla, which is like the hanging gardens. Again, very pretty. So again, like the whole description of the thing. So you see, it goes like more concrete, like just like, okay, let's have a bunch of ideas. Let's do a bunch of coke and see what comes out in terms of ideas to become to make our city more sustainable. You have concrete and pretty things that comes out of the European Bauhaus. Let me just see if I can drop you. Okay, I will drop you the website. There you go. So that way you can, if you're interested, you can dig a bit into all this. What else do we have here? That's the pictures of the. Okay, so that was when she was in Vatican. Spread the word. No, those are just the visuals. I don't think you're interested in just the visuals. Okay, so this thing, it was in Italy. So you see, it's not only Spain. It's the winner of the Rising Star Prize. Okay, so it's pretty cool. It's pretty cool. What else? The inspiring projects. So you see, there's 70. You can find City of Echoes. Wow. Imagine a city made of different voices. Let's see. Living up with everybody's story. Every story counts. University training. Okay. education. Okay, here I think we're more on the high level part of the European Bauhaus. Although assessing projects with criteria which are so vague, it must not be easy. Yes, I mean, then again, since they're not actually financing the project in itself, they're just saying, okay, that's a cool idea, it falls under the philosophy. I think that gives them a bit more leeway, because it's the communication part. It's meant to be inspiring. I mean, they call it an inspiring prize, the Rising Star Prize. So they are less constrained by the need to have something that is, I don't want to say realistic, because I'm sure that the projects are realistic, but like, they don't have to fall into, they don't have to tick the boxes. Yeah, I agree with the real talk. Yes, it's purposely vague to let people like play around with the concept. User engagements. Okay, so that's very conceptual. Let's see if we have something a bit more concrete. Bus stops. See, you can even make bus stops under the European Bauhaus. Main goal is probably to bring more open optimism in the community. Ultimately, yeah, it's one of the goals. Huh? It's meant to, generally speaking, everything that the EU does is supposed to improve people's lives. So in a way, yes, it's supposed to improve the community. Especially in the hard times like this, it's necessary. Yeah. But then again, I mean, the one thing I'm wondering, although like when you look at this, like it's in Tallinn, you see that it's built. Not everything is like just drawings on architect plans, and then no one will ever like make it reality. Here you can see that there are things that are, let's say, smaller scale and that are actually built already. So it's pretty cool. I have to say, pretty cool. You have a question? Well, ask the question. The European Bauhaus and the emergence of common European culture. Yeah, you have 4 hours. I'm not doing the dissertation. You do it. That's your idea. You do the work. What else do we have? Beauty will save the world. That's a bold assertion. And that's very conceptual. But since it's French, I have to support it. A bold claim, the project name of L'Atelier Emmaüs. Emmaüs, yes. Okay, so Emmaüs, for those of you who don't know, Emmaüs is an association in France that is there to help jobless people to find jobs, and you donate things, furniture, etc., and they donate this kind of thing. And so the workshops are usually jobless people that come and do, in this case, carpentry things, and they build things, and then they're being sold by Emmaüs to finance the crews and all that. So it's a cool organization. Okay, so it's more like about the ways Emmaüs is working. Yeah, real talk. Go ahead with your question. In the meantime, I'm gonna scroll with the thing. If I see anything that looks cool. Recycling air tubes for loop. That sounds topical. What if we could make furniture from discarded personal protective equipment like masks? Let's go basic of loop. Project based in Poland. Is that the... Okay, so it's made of the mask. Oh, that's cool. It's pretty cool. Okay, I see the comments. In Germany, there's currently rapid conversation on stopping at the partial sanctions on Russia to damage the rapid inflation on gas price. In Poland, you can see how the far right is slowly gaining, probably due to this. I mean, that's not exclusive to Germany. That's the conversation that you have, let's say, all around Europe, especially in the West. Because people are getting worried because they see their energy bills getting more and more expensive. And so that's one of the reasons why there was a lot of political pressure on the Commission to provide actual answers. Let me go back to the discussion one that way you can see me. Actual answers to the energy crisis and measures. So it's not specific to Germany. A questionable figure in the German left has mentioned how all other countries have already reopened trade with Russia except Germany. No, I mean, for starters, trade was never completely stopped with Germany. I mean, you have targeted sanctions, meaning that there can be no trade with Russia on specific things, like for instance on key piece of technologies. That, for instance, like the typical example, take the spare parts for planes. Spare part for planes. It's Western technology. It's not being exported right now in Russia as part of the sanctions. And now it's pretty well known that Aeroflot, so the national air company of Russia, is flying like barely any plane because they are running out of spare parts. So they're even cannibalizing some of their planes to try to find spare parts for those that can run. So it's only targeted on very specific thing. Trade on gas, like for instance, you mentioned gas. There is no sanction on gas. There is no sanction on gas whatsoever. Partly because of Germany, but you have sanction on oil, but nothing on gas, as far as I know. So no, the trade is not banned around the world or in Europe with Russia. You have one issue, however, is that one of the completely going away from the European Bauhaus, but whatever. The one thing that is now the focus of the Commission and the member state is how to prevent circumvention. So the idea that people are going around the sanctions of the EU to provide the goods to get stuff to Russia. That's part of the one part of the discussion, and the Commission now is looking into ways to how to make sure that the sanctions are airtight, so that it's not easy for someone to go around the sanctions and actually provide Russia with the goods or import from Russia goods that are being banned in Europe. But what is true at the same time is that not all countries around the world are implementing the sanctions that the EU has been taking. I don't know where I could find it. I've seen maps on this. But basically, you have the West, so the EU, the US, Canada, the allied countries in Southeast Asia, in Japan, Australia, etc. That they have implemented sanctions against Russia. Some other countries are following it, but other parts of the world are not following the sanction, and so they're still importing oil from Russia. They're still providing some piece of technology to Russia. This kind of thing. It's part of the discussion. And one of the strategy stakes, because we've seen notably in Africa, Russia scoring a lot of points with African countries by managing to peddle their propaganda to some African countries who believe that, for instance, or at least claim that indeed Russia is not necessarily the bad guy, or that there is no need to follow the West in terms of sanctions, etc., etc. Actually, that if you want something about that, Emmanuel Macron, so French president, made his speech yesterday at the UN National General Assembly yesterday evening. Yesterday evening, specifically on this topic, on the framing of the aggression of Russia, and the fact that countries that claim not to follow Russia, that don't want to follow the West in the sanction on Russia, are actually helping directly or indirectly Russia in their crime. It's a pretty good speech. So if you have the occasion, go watch it. It's pretty good as a speech. Lots of reports from many regulators, Spain, Greece, and Austria have shown that the increased gas price was mainly due to an increase of gas demand due to by anticipating potential sanctions. Last-wing popular opinion surprised me because I'm not as active in the German conversation on Russia. Might end up with German calling for less sanctions, or with doubling or tripling of the far-right support in Germany. That's one of the political stakes, and that's why, again, there's a lot of political pressure on the Commission to give the member state the tools to answer these concerns. Now, it's a concern. The question is, how overblown is this idea that people people are thinking that actually we should stop the sanctions. Of course, on the far right, you find this. I mean, in any case, the far right tends to be more supportive of the Russians. So I mean, not surprising from them, but I would say that the solutions the proposals that the Commission has put on the table to deal with the energy crisis provide very concrete answers. Like there are things, if they are implemented, that will actually give money to go to people to pay their bills. So let's see, what do you think are real short or mid-term solution without Russia? Well, short term is finding as many alternative suppliers as possible, and that's what member states are doing. They're doing the rounds. They're going to see Qatar, Saudi Arabia, Algeria, Norway, the US, Canada, etc., to compensate their source of natural gas. Even if it takes time, it's not easy, etc., etc. But they are trying to find alternative to Russia in the short term. And then middle term and long term, it's about building infrastructure, and it's participating to the process of transforming the energy mix in the European Union, in the sense that countries that are today very dependent on Russian gas now understand that, okay, they have to change their energy mix so that they're less dependent on gas. So that means probably more renewable energy, maybe nuclear powers. In some countries in the short term, they are reopening coal plants, these kind of things. Immediately for that pool, an actual possibility. It's a possibility. It's a possibility. Then it's a matter of having the supplies and also the infrastructure, which takes time. Germany reopens the nuclear power. I mean, that's for the Germans to decide. But given the situation, they have agreed to keep some of the nuclear plants that were supposed to be closed on the side in case of emergency, so that they can be restarted during winter and provide the necessary energy. So there is still an option for nuclear power in the short term in Germany. But yeah, we completely went away from the European Bauhaus. But well, I hope that it made for interesting conversation anyway. Like I said, I don't want to make it too long because I have to prepare stuff for tomorrow. It's gonna be painful to wake up at 4 tomorrow morning, but well, it's for the cause. Any questions or do I do my conclusion? I'm gonna close my stuff. I don't need you anymore. Tack. I don't see any burning questions, so let's conclude this. So I hope that you enjoyed the interview, that you understand a bit better what is the European Bauhaus. I hope that in the future we will have again the commission coming on the channel. Fingers crossed, touch wood, all that thing. I will see you next week. I'm still sorting out the exact agenda. For sure, there will be at least one interview with an MEP. It will also we will restart the news review on Sunday. So from not this Sunday, the one next week, we will have the news review that are back. So yeah. I will let you know. I mean, again, I'm going to be a bit quiet for the rest of the week because I'm away until Sunday, basically. So I will have less possibilities to update you on stuff. But on Sunday evening and next week and Monday at the latest, I will give you the complete program for the content to come. So it's gonna be great. As usual, if you like what you saw, don't hesitate to follow. That's always appreciated. You can follow me on my other social media. If you really... Oh, shit, if I don't put in the right... There you go. If you really like what you saw, you can subscribe like Monopoly did earlier in the stream. Thank you. I could not react because I was doing the introduction. But thank you for the service. Much appreciated. You can also toss a coin to your stream via Coffee. I'm not going on vacation, it's for work. So, still a good cause, but it's for work. But yeah, have a good evening, and I hope to see you all next week. Have a good one, guys. Bye.